The last time we were supposed to be here was the day we canceled in the morning. 2 hours later, they declared COVID a global pandemic. An hour after we canceled, we had our first case in New Mexico. So this is our first time fully back in person, and we didn't think we were going to fill the room. So 150 seats, 147 RSVPs. Thank you guys so much for coming. Dave Hansen, Dr. Hansen, is our Assistant Vice President for Research, External Relations, and Professor of Biology, and a longtime supporter of BEMP, and he is here to give our official welcome.
It's great to see a full room. Thank you very much, Dennis. So, really, thanks for everyone for coming here to celebrate, Cliff Crawford and the BEMP program. I'm privileged to have known Cliff in the 22 years that I've been here, and he was really, I've seen him in action, and he was really a fantastic human being. So I want to stop and say, how many people in this room want to make a positive impact on the world? Just raise your hand. All right. Good. Now, I want you to keep your hands there for a minute. Now, how many of you are confident that you know how to teach others how to do that? Yeah, okay. So if your hand is still up, right, then you know why you're here, right? Because you know what we're trying to what they're doing. And if your hand went down or didn't go up yet, then I'm really here to tell you that you're here to invest in the BEMP program. And investing in this program can be by participating in it for the younger folks in the audience, by volunteering to help out for it, and being a big spokesman there. And you can put your hand down too now. It's awesome. It's very good. So really, it's really fantastic. We've got fantastic people that can teach you how to really do something great and have an impact. BEMP was started in 1996, 6 years before I started, and it's continued strong for a long time. It's been a program of biology, of the Union Biology Department, where it started. It was envisioned to address the need for long-term monitoring of the bosque ecosystem and the need for community engagement and outreach. And really, to me, the public good, that comes from this is understanding how to keep our ecosystems healthy, right? That's a real public good that doing this work is having. That's a real way to do things that can have an impact. But to really have the impact is to do that with your community. Okay, so I think that this is really big ways while you're going to do something meaningful, do it with your community, and BEMP is good at that. And I really think the thing that excites me even more is that they use the data to impact public policy, right? To try to have a bigger role in understanding what we should do in a region to have that good benefit, to do good. Cliff originally envisioned doing this through a program that would have 8 sites, along the Rio Grande with community members along those sites. Right, that's a very good, solid starting point. BEMP grew to 34 sites. 34 sites, 10,000 participants a year before the pandemic. Right, you have to stop and just think about 10,000 participants a year? What is that? How much of the pit does that fill? But how many, think of your sporting events you go to, or your other art events or other activities, science fairs, whatever it is, and then multiply that by a lot to get to 10,000 participants a year. That's a big deal. So I wanted to stop and just clap for that, right? That's a huge deal. Obviously, as we heard, the pandemic was a bump in the road, and they're coming back now, right? It's really getting that former footprint, hitting 5,000 students a year now in person from 48 schools and community organizations. That is already huge again, and we're going to keep growing that with your guys' participation. And this symposium is a really great time. This Crawford Symposium is a great time to bring together the K through 12 students. And I'm glad to see a bunch of you guys are here because you're the future. And that's not just, it's an old saying repeated all the time, but it's true. And to bring our community members, our teachers, our parents, our educators, every group that we need to come in and make this really continue to grow. So I truly am delighted to see everyone full here. You could tell from Kim that she's just over the moon, and it is really wonderful. And in that team, the leadership team, is really fantastic, right? The reason why they can reach so many people, and the reason why it keeps going so strong, and the reason why it's come back so fast after the pandemic is because we have wonderful staff and faculty and students leading the way for BEMP. So with that, I don't want to delay more. Thank you very much.
BEMP Science and Education takes place on current and ancestral lands of the Pueblo, Diné, Navajo, Apache, and other displaced indigenous peoples. BEMP acknowledges that this land was forcibly stolen by European colonizers and that the detrimental effects of their presence through violence, displacement, and disease are still impactful today. We offer this acknowledgement as a first step in honoring the indigenous peoples and their ancestors and as a call towards further learning and action as guests in this place.
La ciencia y la educación de BEMP se llevan a cabo en las tierras actuales y ancestrales de los pueblos Diné, Navajo, Apache y otros pueblos indígenas desplazados. BEMP reconoce que esta tierra fue robada a la fuerza por los colonizadores europeos y que los efectos perjudiciales de su presencia a través de la violencia, el desplazamiento y las enfermedades aún tienen un gran impacto en la actualidad. Ofrecemos este reconocimiento como un primer paso para honrar a la gente indígena y sus antepasados, pero también como llamada para un aprendizaje y unas acciones más profundas como huéspedes en este lugar.
Hello all. Welcome to this year's Crawford Symposium. My name is Zoe Watkins-Daniels. I am the Education Director at BEMP. If you see a little polka-dotted gremlin running around, that's my personal Executive Director, Abel. He will be here shortly. It's really wonderful to see you all here, and I do hope that you have settled safely and in good health. I have been giving a lot of thought recently to the meaning of this work, the meaning of education, the meaning of science, and of their merging through the voices of our community members here tonight in this space. There are, of course, the more obvious answers, like because your teachers told you you had to be here. But then there are the more subtle. And I keep being drawn to something greater beneath all of the work that we do. I believe, especially in these times, that it's because we're figuring out how to connect better. We're figuring out how to thrive on and with the planet. This work is our practicing that relationships matter, and it is a show of our love of land. The incredible professor, Manulani Aluli-Meyer, refers to this interweaving of ours as holographic epistemology. Knowledge, she sees, is comprised of three versions of reality: body, mind, and spirit. And when they are equally incorporated, knowing becomes an active exchange of individual and collective experience that endures over years, generations, and lifetimes. Relationships shift from being nouns to becoming verbs. Learning then becomes three-dimensional, and the whole of life is found in all parts. Despite the many variations of learning that schools, teachers, and community partners have had to readjust to over the last several years, BEMP Education did its best to meet our community's needs at every turn. Since this time last year, BEMP Education, we didn't reach 10,000 direct contacts, However, we did reach over 5,000 in-person direct contacts with students and adults, and that was through in-person contacts alone, engaging 50 different schools and community organizations, and we are still going. Instruction was provided in person at field locations and in outdoor and on-campus classrooms through field monitoring collections and in study trips. We also offered an ongoing array of educational programming provided online through printable and electronic means, including self-led activities and video lessons. Moreover, university students participating in the Biology 408-508 internship course conducted field and lab work during this time. But our work is not just numbers. It's people, it's planet, it's perspective. It is the deep value of engaging audiences through our broader ecosystem. It is an encouragement for us to see ourselves connected to, rather than separate from, one another and our more than human world. Tonight's presentations will be a colorful display of this connectivity and the scientific study underpinning it all. And so I consider that our gathering together is an honoring of Manulani Aluli-Meyer's words and work. It is a creative display of the joy and inspiration that the earth offers, and a sharing of collective experience that I hope endures over years, generations, and lifetimes. May this year's Crawford Symposium spark in you a sense of learning that lingers in honor of our community's creativity and transformation during this time. With that in mind, I want to recognize the ongoing efforts of our school teachers, students, and families for the multitudes of ways in which they have shown up this year and all others, despite the obstacles. Thank you for sharing your authenticity and laughter with us. And to those of you in the audience, thank you for showing up in support of our youth and for all that you do to assist BEMP in remaining an integral component of the Middle Rio Grande. We are all truly grateful. Without further ado, I will hand the mic back off to Louisa and our first student presenters.
Thank you, everybody who has spoken. Our first presentation is going to be made by our pre-Ks who are in the house. We have pre-K students from Mission Avenue Elementary School, if you guys want to come up.
Hi, my name is Danielle Rodriguez, and this is Melissa Carrillo, and we are the pre-K classroom at Mission Avenue STEM Magnet Elementary, and we got the opportunity to go on a field trip to the Bosque this year, and we had such an amazing time. Now, I'm not somebody who really loves the outdoors, but from this field trip, I gained a broader perspective. I had a great time, and even more so, our students had a wonderful time. We couldn't stop talking about it when we got to the classroom. We're still talking about it today. So with me, I have Sonrisa, Zoe, Axel, and Leo, and they're just here to kind of tell you about their experience at the Bosque and what they saw, what they did, and all of the fun and exciting things we did. So, Sonrisa, can you tell us one amazing thing that you learned or did at the Bosque?
I saw a porcupine and a tree. I saw some cottonwood trees, and when everything was over at the first day of my Bosque with the teacher for my field trip, I went bike riding with my mom, and it was so much fun. We had a snack, and then we left.
Great job. Hi, Zoe. Can you say good evening?
Good evening.
Zoe, what is something that you loved about the field trip to the Bosque? What is something that you saw or remember? Do you remember the tracks? Yeah, what did you see? Tell them about the tracks.
We saw horse tracks
In the dirt, right?
in the dirt.
And what else? Do you remember the river, the water?
We found a porcupine in a tree, and we picked up leaves and drove them.
Yes, beautiful. Great. All right, Axel, what do you want to tell our friends about what you saw or did or something that was amazing at the Bosque field trip?
I picked up a stick and I snapped it, and then I saw a star.
Anything else? Awesome job. Good job.
All right, name is your turn.
All right, Leo. Hi, Leo. Leo, what do you want to tell our friends about what you did, saw, something that was amazing that you were excited about, that you learned on our field trip?
We found a porcupine in the tree, and we found mistletoe.
Yes, we did. Do you remember the seagulls?
We found seagulls.
Yes. There was different types of trees.
There were types of trees.
Good job. Anything else? And here are just some of the rest of our slides. And these are at the back as well if you want to take a closer look. But overall, taking a pre-K program to the Albuquerque Bosque offers a holistic educational experience that integrates nature, play, and learning, providing children with valuable opportunities for growth, exploration, and connection with the environment. Sorry, as I'm looking at the side, that's terrible, but thank you so much for inviting us on this exciting trip. We truly had such an amazing time, and we've loved being able to connect what we learned back into the classroom. And then, as you heard, they took it from the classroom in our field trip back home, and some of them went on their own, which is really amazing and exactly what we want from programs like this. So thank you so much for having us.
My heart. It was so sweet. All right, up next, we have 6th and 7th graders, 7th grade students from Horizons Albuquerque.
Are you guys using slides? Did you make slides?
He made a slide.
So to move forward, just press this button. Okay? Yeah. All right.
Hello, my name is Deacon Olivas Ortega. I've been with Horizons Albuquerque for 7 years, 3 of which I've been with BEMP. I'm here this evening to talk about my time involved in BEMP, Bosque Ecosystem Monitoring Program. I'd like to start off by saying what an amazing ecosystem that we have in the Bosque. We start off our mornings on a nature walk. On our walks, we observe the wildlife that inhabits the bosque. We set up boxes, charcoal, sticky paper, and cat food to attract small animals and collect their tracks. Periodically, we will walk to the Rio Grande River and take samples of the water to check the pH levels, bacteria, and microscopic organisms living within the river. We collect these samples from the river, pond, and the ditch. The ecosystems that we look at helps us tell how healthy the water is. We found that the water was primarily healthy. We also looked at the arthropods that are on the land. We found 3 roly-polies, 8 beetles, 28 ants, and 5 spiders, and 6 of mixed organisms. We built a contraption that caught these organisms. It was a cup in the ground that the organisms fell into. We let the cup collect the organisms for 2 days. Then we examined them after these 2 days. All of this to say, I have a great time during BEMP. We should try to pick up trash and protect the bosque because it is a self-sustainable ecosystem, and in order to keep this that way, we have to be very mindful of this great ecosystem. Thank you.
BEMP. Hello, my name is Noah Aragon, and I have experienced BEMP with Horizons Albuquerque. I was born and raised here in Albuquerque. I love BEMP, and I'm very excited to do it again this summer. What is BEMP? BEMP is a well-organized educational program dealing with the life and ecosystems of the bosque in our Rio Grande River. BEMP allows students and visitors help with their research in the bosque. BEMP can get research while also educating the visitors and students. What did you do last summer with BEMP? Something I did with BEMP last summer was test the water in the Rio Grande River to see if plant and animal life could still be livable. Another thing we did last summer is study macroinvertebrates. One of the last things we did was see what animals live in the bosque by looking at their footprints. What materials did you use? Animal footprints: charcoal, plastic box, cat food, and sticky paper. Macroinvertebrates, plastic buckets, nets, and magnifying glass. Arthropods, plastic cups in the ground bugs will go into. Favorite activity with them? My favorite activity with them was the animal prints because it was fun constructing them and then looking at all the prints we got the next day. The animal print was my favorite, but I also liked the macroinvertebrate because at the end we made a poster which I really liked because I like to be creative. Why is BEMP important? BEMP is important because it helps with research about our bosque and Rio Grande River. BEMP is a very good program and is very important to our research about the bosque and Rio Grande River. Data. Arthropods, some data we collected for the arthropods have exoskeleton, multiple pairs of legs, and segment bodies and segment joints. Animal footprints. Some data we found was wood rat, true squirrel, white-footed mouse, raccoon, and ant footprints. Macroinvertebrates. Some data we found was that they help keep the pond and river healthy with a strong ecosystem. And then the monthly monitoring. The site name was Savannah, and if you could see it. And then conclusion. I think BEMP is a wonderful educational program dealing with research about our bosque and Rio Grande River. A special thanks to Horizons Albuquerque for allowing me to be a part of BEMP and their research. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Horizons. Up next, we have Camilla Callow, who is a ninth grade student at Career College and Career High School. So you'd like to come up?
You just press that button to go next on your slides.
So for my science project, we studied the effects of stormwater and tap water on plant growth. And my group members were Caitlin, Bernice, and Jasmine. Okay, so research question. In a laboratory setting over a 5-week period, we're studying how this impacted corn growth on the independent variable being the 2 different types of water, which is the stormwater and then regular tap water. And we were initially inspired by this experiment because of BEMP. And someone from their program came down to our classroom and talked about groundwater transplants and how it flows into our ecosystem and affects all the plants and animals. And with this, it inspired us, as I briefly mentioned, how tap water is polluted and can infect can affect lots of plants and animals. So a bit of background information on what stormwater runoff exactly is. It's unfiltered water, so it does not go through the plant that processes water from your toilets or sinks, and all of this goes straight into the ecosystem, or the Rio Grande in our case. This is polluted with E. coli and any types of chemicals from your cars, and around 30% of microplastics are actually from the cars, and there are small microparticles in the rubber, and through our research you will see how it has impacted its growth. So for our materials, it's a very simple experiment. We just set up 2 different potted plants with 3 seeds of corn per biodegradable plant container. And we simulated a stormwater. Obviously, it does not rain that much in New Mexico, so we simulated the type of stormwater that we would normally see in the environment that runs directly into the Rio Grande. So we took lots of antifreeze directly from the road and lots of microplastics that would help create this situation closest to real life. Here are our methods, and over time, so the 5-week period, as I stated before, we took around 10 milliliters of water, and we watered this over a couple days. Periodically, we measured, and with our results, you can clearly see that the plants that were watered with tap water were about 3.1 times faster growing with these corn plants. Corn plants usually grow 1 to 1.5 centimeters per day, and with the stormwater runoff, these plants rarely blew. Some of them didn't even germinate in the first place. And what this demonstrates is that stormwater runoff from anything that you don't pick up, like feces from your pets, your dogs, all this bacteria runs right into our stormwater and directly into the Rio Grande. So it's very important to keep our water clean and safe for the environment, especially because it's unfiltered, and clearly seen by my results, by my project's results, that all of the plants are greatly affected, and this will create a chain effect in our ecosystem. So many animals, plants, and even us as people who drink this water will be impacted by the pollutants from the road and water runoff. And thank you.
Awesome. Up next, we have seniors from Next Gen Academy presenting on their projects on arthropods. Seniors.
Alrighty. So our presentation is on arthropod ecology in the Valle de Oro and the State Land Office. All right, before we get into it, I'd like to take a quick second here to make some acknowledgments to our team, and as well as our mentors, Kayla and Shelby, who taught us everything we know about arthropods, and we're really thankful for that because this was an awesome project. As you see us on stage here from right to left, this is Levi, Sophia, Ebony, Gabe, I'm Alex, this is Vanessa. Yeah.
We are seniors from Next Gen Academy who worked on this project with Valle de Oro and BEMP to gather data about the different arthropod communities in 2 areas, the Valle de Oro and the State Land Office. We measured the health of the ecosystem. We did this through comparing the diversity and abundance through these arthropod species with the different sites and previous year's data.
All right. So again, we were at the Valle de Oro, which is a wildlife refuge, which is situated in the heart of Albuquerque's industrial area. Before, it was actually a farmland for cattle, but it's been transformed into a public land. It's trying to be transformed into a wetland. The BEMP Valle de Oro is the area which we collected arthropod samples from. It is a very dry, arid, grassy area in early stages of restoration. We also collected arthropods from the State Land Office, which is near the Rio Grande. There's far much more water, and it's a more forested area, which provides ample amounts of shade. And yeah.
All right, so at these two sites, our main method of collecting data was by using pitfall traps, which is when two cups kind of sit flush with the dirt in the ground, and there's a wooden lid that sits just raised above it so that arthropods can crawl in and we can collect them without larger creatures interfering with it. We had about 20 at each site, so there was about 40 total. And we would leave them open for about 1 day, and then we came back to collect them. We'd take the top cup out and dump them gently in a bag to record our findings. And the things we recorded included their species, which we would identify, and the amount of arthropods in each trap.
Okay, so these are the results from all of our data, and this graph right here is comparing the VDO to the SLO in 2023. So our key takeaways here is that the SLO is showing a higher overall arthropod abundance, but the VDO has a higher biodiversity, and you can really see that in that pink shaded area right there, which all those are ants, so you can clearly see, Yeah, we had a lot of ants there. And this shows that the collected data, I'm sorry, give me 1 second. So yeah, we had a higher amount of a dominant species in one area compared to another. Okay. So this next graph right here is comparing 2022's data to 2023's data in the Valle de Oro. And you can see a significant drop in abundance of these arthropod species between the years. But another interesting thing here is that the amount of beetles in that area decreased to give room to more wetland species, which there's still a significant amount of beetles in that area, signifying that there's kind of an arid desert environment there. And what we want from the video is a restored wetland. So this shows right here that we need to put some more effort into that restoration. And then finally, we have the comparison between the 2022 abundance and 2023 abundance in the State Land Office. And you can clearly see right there that dramatic shift in biodiversity with, again, those ants just taking up a large chunk of that. Even though there's more arthropod species there, that's not necessarily a good thing because there's just one dominant species, and we want a mixture of different species there, competing with each other in a healthy way. And yeah.
To conclude, basically the point of this entire project was that arthropods can tell us a lot about the health of an ecosystem, like Gabe was saying. The presence of a lot of beetles shows that the area was experiencing desertification, so it's really dry. And then it did show us that, like he said, that we have a way to go in restoration. And then some things that we learned is that there will be hiccups in data collection, like interrupted traps. We had, I think, about 3 traps that had no data because they were collected things that they shouldn't have. And then some recommendations that we have for next year's group is that they should consider that their traps are placed in similar areas so that we're monitoring the same populations. And we'll continue to monitor these populations with future Next Gen Seniors classes.
Thank you so much. I love the cockroaches. They're amazing. Okay, next up. Every semester, BEMP hosts a cohort of undergrad interns. through our upper division course in the UNM biology department. The next two presentations are from advanced interns who have pursued a second semester with us and undertaken a special research project. Is that you? You're the, okay. So UNM students, I think we have Tara, Tara, Emily, and Michaela up first.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here with us today. We are truly honored to present to you our findings and what we've been working on since the beginning of the semester. I'm Emily.
My name is Michaela.
I'm Tara.
The clicker. So we wanted to start off by telling you why we got interested in BEMP. And for me, I love the outdoors. I love being here in New Mexico because I think we have such a beautiful landscape and ecosystem, and I really enjoyed BEMP because it also gave me the opportunity to work with students.
I actually really enjoy nature, and I really enjoy, programs that want to help our ecosystem, and that is something that really pushed me to join BEMP and continue working with BEMP.
I was interested in BEMP because I'm actually not from here. I'm from a different riparian ecosystem in New Orleans. And I was really interested in this particular, how it works, how it goes together. It was very fascinating to me, and as I've pursued my biology degree, I've developed more of an interest in ecology. And so it's really been cool to dig deeper into that and see how all the different parts of the ecosystem here play into each other.
So first off, we want to start by thanking all of our sponsors, especially the Water Foundation, and for everyone who has been here to support us and to make this project possible. We truly do believe that our findings are instrumental in policymaking and education and conservation. So thank you so much to everybody who is here to support us and everyone who has supported us along this journey as well.
So this is actually an example of one of many of our sites, maps. This site actually is our Montano site, which was actually the first site that me, Emily, and Tara went out and collected the data for. So as you can see, each map contains, and each site contains 10 vegetation plots. And in those vegetation plots, we go ahead and count and measure the cottonwoods within each vegetation plot, and we use that data to help us compare it to past and future data. And as you can see here, this actually is one of Cliff Crawford's maps actually compared to one of our maps, one of our recent maps that we actually all worked together to do. So, Cliff Crawford actually believed that in order to actually understand an ecosystem, it's important to collect more than just the data. He took really extensive notes and just to give him really good understanding of the ecosystem and just to give him more idea and more information. Here is another one of our data collection sheets where we go ahead and count the cottonwoods in each vegetation plot. We go ahead and also measure them if they're over 10 centimeters. And we go ahead and also include any additional information, like if we have an older tree, if we have a newer tree, and if, for instance, one of the trees has fallen over. And recently we actually have been working to sex the trees, and since, as you can tell, it's spring and trees are flowering. So, yeah.
Okay. So we take our supplies around the site in a bucket. You can see our list. When we're working a site, we typically decide our jobs amongst ourselves, what we're good at or what we prefer. I don't mind tromping around through expanses of kochia or army crawling under Russian olive thorns, so they let me do that and find rebar, which is what we have at the corners of our plots. So anyway, big question. Why is this important? Why are we doing this? Cottonwoods are a foundation species of the riparian bosque. The data shows our partners how the cottonwoods at the sites are doing in terms of multiple factors, growth, propagation, and the design and funding of the conservation projects are directly informed by the data that we are collecting. So it's huge. We put the data into graphs. It helps us answer questions, notice trends that can inform cottonwood management. For instance, like how much depth to groundwater makes a difference between two similar sites. You can see Rio Grande Nature Center, RGNC, has more die-off, less new trees, less average DBH than Alameda, even though the groundwater is shallower. So it informs other factors are at play, like understory composition and tree ages. So it gives us other variables that we can measure and check out. Anyway.
Thank you so much for letting us do this short presentation. But if any of you are interested in hearing more about our work or just our experience in BEMP in general, please feel free to talk to us anytime throughout tonight. Thank you.
Is this your phone? Whose phone is this? Somebody's phone. I don't know whose phone this is.
Hello, my name is Mackenzie, and this is Erica, and today we are going to be presenting on the research that we've been working on this semester as a part of BEMP's advanced internship class. So our research addresses changes in cottonwood populations through mapping cottonwood distribution, measuring the diameter of each tree at breast height, and determining the sex of each tree. The data that we collect will help us predict how cottonwood stands are expanding and or contracting, and will also help us determine what environmental factors are influencing these changes. This vital research is primarily being funded by our partners at the Water Foundation. For our project, we wanted to specifically look at how population dynamics of cottonwood trees compare between restored and unmanaged sites over time. For our research, we focused on 4 key sites, each with their own unique environmental characteristics. Our first site is in Belen, and it features natural recruitment, occasional flooding, and the presence of some exotic species. The Sabieta is our second site, and it's noted for natural recruitment, seep flooding, high salinity, and a mix of native and non-native plants. Crawford, our third site, is characterized by bank lowering, exotic species removal, and frequent flooding. And finally, our final site, the Albuquerque Overbank Project, is similar to Crawford in that it is characterized by bank lowering, exotic species removal, and regular flooding events. So our hypothesis was that if restoration projects focus on restoring natural flooding regimes by lowering bank levels, then the population of cottonwood trees will increase or remain stable over time. Because the restoration of natural flooding patterns enhances seed dispersal, supports greater germination rates, improves sapling survival, and decreases depth to groundwater. Our methodology involves closely monitoring cottonwood growth and health across all of our BEMP sites. At each site, there are 10 established plots, each with measuring 5 by 30 meters, all of which are marked with blue rebar for clear delineation. Within these plots, every cottonwood tree that falls within the boundaries is carefully mapped and tagged if its diameter exceeds 10 centimeters. We also make note of any previously marked trees that have died since our last survey. This approach allows us to maintain precise records and monitor changes over time, ensuring the accuracy and reliability of our data collection.
So after collecting this data over a span of 4 months, we wanted to compare all the new data to the old collections to create these comparison graphs. We wanted to compare average DBH, which is diameter at breast height, which is 150 centimeters, the number of new trees, the number of dead trees, and finally trees smaller than 10 centimeters and bigger than 10 centimeters. By looking at our results, we can observe that the results are a little mixed. AOP, which is the Albuquerque Overbank Project, is currently overrun by exotic species, which is why we can see a decrease in DBH and the number of trees from the last collection in 2015. At the Crawford site, the number of bigger trees has increased, with also a slight increase of DBH as well. At the Belen site, the average DBH has increased with a decrease in the number of bigger trees, and we also found some new trees. Finally, at the Sevietta site, there is an increase over time of bigger trees, but there is also a decrease in the smaller trees present. Although at all of these sites, there's not a lot of young trees present, this does support our hypothesis previously stated by Kenzie. From these results, we wanted to see if groundwater was a factor in this. So we took groundwater data from 2007 to 2023 for these sites, and our results show that groundwater depth is within tolerable limits. For the cottonwood roots, despite how low the Sevietta line, which you can see as the green line is, it is also still within limits, so that's what we like to see. Okay. In conclusion, this research is very important and very vital for the protection of cottonwood trees. We would like to monitor and see how healthy the ecosystem is, and by this, we can determine how basically healthy the ecosystem is. For future research, we would love to include native and exotic species and take a ratio of native and exotic and see how these ratios compare and see if that maybe has an impact to the results that we're seeing. And again, we also want to help continue doing this research to see how these sites change and adapt over time, to see the variations as well. And again, another thank you to the Water Foundation and our partners for allowing this research to happen. We thank you very much.
Thank you, UNM students. Up next, we have Wes Noe, who is a graduate student with the Bixby Research Group and is also the facility manager for our biology greenhouse here on campus. He is here to share some of his research with the Water Resources Program. Wes.
Hi everyone, my name is Wes Noe, and I'm a dual grad student in the Water Resources Program and in the Planning Department. Today I'm going to be telling you about changes in drying patterns at an urban wetland here in Albuquerque. To start though, I want to tell you about where that wetland is and how it was created. The San Antonio Oxbow wetland is centrally located here in Albuquerque and is right across the river from the Rio Grande Nature Center and the Canoyer Nature Preserve. It was created through a series of man-made events in the 1900s. And an oxbow, just to let you know, is an wetland or lake that is a remnant piece of river as a river naturally meanders and changes course. However, here at the San Antonio Oxbow, it was created through a series of man-made events starting in the 1930s to 1950. In the 1930s to 1950, there was extremely high flows and a lot of flooding in Albuquerque. This cut into, I thought this had a laser, but this cut into the bluff of the west side, as you can see in the top left photo, and it caused a lot of erosion. In response to this flooding and erosion, a couple of engineering projects got implemented in the 50s, the first being the channelization of the Rio Grande through the jetty jacks. As we saw through the whole entire Rio Grande, this was successful, and at the Oxbow, it was also successful in channelizing the river. With the channelization here at the San Antonio Oxbow, though, a remnant piece of the river was left over. And in addition to the jetty jacks being installed, the lower Corrales Riverside drain was also extended to the Oxbow. Both of these enabled the beavers to fill a niche here at the Oxbow, and the beavers ended up creating a dam in the Riverside drain that ended up increasing water levels in the drain, eventually inundating the berm and the Oxbow, creating a wetland. Moving into the 1970s, though, the beavers were a big concern for the Conservancy. In response, the Conservancy started to do some repairs, but to do repairs, they had to dry out the work area, and in order to dry out the work area, they diverted the flows upstream. However, when they dried out the work area, it also dried out the Oxbow, and it resulted in a lot of wildlife mortality. The Sierra Club and the Bosque Society were really concerned about the wildlife mortality, and they worked with their volunteers to rally support to re-wet the oxbow. They re-wet the oxbow by working with the fire department to haul water and by also digging trenches through the berms in order to maintain the wetness in the oxbow. In 1976, the Conservancy entered an informal agreement with the city, and they agreed that they would provide an adequate amount of water to the oxbow. Moving into the 1970s, the Conservancy held true to this promise. However, the beavers were able to proliferate throughout the whole entire oxbow area, and through the construction of their dams, eventually areas that were previously dry were inundated with water. In addition, during this time in the 1980s, the Flood Control Authority, AMAFCA, diverted storm flows from two other arroyos into the San Antonio Arroyo. They did this because the San Antonio Arroyo drained directly into the Rio Grande. However, when they did this, it increased the duration and strength of the flows, and when this happened, there was a greater erosion in the San Antonio Arroyo and greater erosion at the oxbow. In addition, there was a lot of development on the west side, which was exacerbating the issue by increasing impervious surface areas. So in response to the sediment and erosion issues at the San Antonio Arroyo, the Flood Control Authority implemented a couple of restoration programs. They did this because in the 1990s, the sediment became such a big problem that it created two fans in the summer of 1990 and in the summer of 1995. Again, the Sierra Club stepped in, and they were able to maintain the oxbow being wet. In response, the Flood Control Authority implemented the restoration, and they did this by enhancing the banks of the arroyo, constructing berms, and they also created a sedimentation tank. During this time, Open Space entered an agreement with the city, with the Conservancy and with the Flood Control for collaborative management. And in addition, Open Space began purchasing the properties within the oxbow to better protect it. In addition, the San Antonio Oxbow Management Plan was implemented during this time at the request of the Sierra Club. Moving into the 2010s, though, there's little information. Quick reference to Google Earth imagery doesn't show any unusual drying at the oxbow, but it also lacks in summer months. One important thing that happened during this time period, though, was the death of Susie Poole. She was the landowner of the adjacent land on the bluff of the oxbow. She passed away in 2012, and eventually her land was transferred to some land developers, and there was the potential for a single-family land development to be created at this area. However, it's really important to recognize that this is the last remaining marsh wetland and is cared deeply about by the community. So moving into the 2020s, Susie Poole's house actually burnt down in March 2020, and it spurred the developers to start their construction. However, the neighborhood really rallied together, and they had a lot of community action, resulting in the city of Albuquerque eventually purchasing the Poole property, thus increasing the size of the protected area. However, that doesn't negate the fact that this decade so far, we have seen extremely low flows this decade. And in 2022 and in 2023, we saw the Rio Grande dry in the Albuquerque Reach for the first time in 40 years. And with that said, we can also expect the oxbow to go dry on a more regular basis. In 2022 and 2023, I collected depth to groundwater at the oxbow, and I found that in 2022, the water table was lower compared to 2023. But this area is resilient, and through collaborative management, we can ensure that the oxbow remains wet, even if the river goes dry. To close, I want to show you some repeat photography that I took within the oxbow at a caltapa. And I want to point out that this caltapa is a landscaping caltapa, and it's not native to the Rio Grande. But it still makes for a really, really unique repeat photography. And as you can see, there's a lot of variability throughout the past couple of years. With that said, though, I want to remind everybody of what I have talked about today, and that is that the San Antonio Oxbow wetland has gone dry before, and it has been caused by human causes. However, the drying that we're seeing so far this decade, I really do believe is a lot more related to human-related climate change. So I'll let you have a minute to look at these look at the photos. And with that said, you can direct any questions to my email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wes. All right, up next we have Jonathan Tyrell, who is a longtime BEMPer here and is here to share some of his journey with and beyond BEMP. He is currently the program manager at the Next 100 Coalition based in Colorado. Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And before I get into my comments, I want to just quickly pause and say thank you so much to the BEMP staff who have worked tirelessly over the last couple of weeks to put this on. As a former BEMP staffer, which I'll get into in a minute, I know how much of a labor of love the Crawford Symposium is, and I would just take a moment to acknowledge all of the fantastic work to get everybody in the room today. So thank you all so much. With that being said, my name is Jonathan Terrell, and I am a former BEMP student, staff, and undergraduate. And part of the reason I think they keep inviting me back to these things is I had the immense privilege and honor of working directly with Dr. Cliff Crawford, as you'll see here in the photo on the left. I started BEMPing whenever I was 9 years old. Going out with my family and my school to the Harrison site in Albuquerque, South Valley with Dr. Crawford. And one of the things that I was really fond of and would look forward to this time every year was when that site became the floodplain that the Bosque is defined by. And I remember as an 8, 9, 10-year-old looking forward to every year getting to wade into the waters of the Rio Grande and connect in a deep and meaningful way with Albuquerque and the Middle Rio Grande's natural landscape. So much so that I continued to pursue educational and career opportunities through BEMP, rejoining the organization as a high school intern, and then later as the Crawford Fellow. Whenever I became an undergraduate at the University of New Mexico, I served both of the Crawford Fellow, presenting at this symposium in 2017, and supporting undergraduates and students at K through 12 level as a BEMP staff. I also was extremely proud of piloting BEMP's after-school science program at Inez and other elementary and middle schools. And it really made me realize how passionate I was, not only about connecting with the environment through conservation and data and science, but also connecting with local communities. And I think the intersection that BEMP provides between that aspect of community and environment is something that I've really embraced and grown to love about the rest of my career as it's been thus far. And what I'd love to share with you now is a couple of opportunities that I've gotten, much in part thanks to my participation in BEMP and the things that I learned as a student and staff person and undergraduate through this program. One of the first things that I did after graduating my degree in biology and psychology with a minor in chemistry was working for an environmental facilitation organization based out of Colorado, supporting Colorado wolf restoration in the state. It was an amazing opportunity not only to get to know a new landscape, a new environment, but also a community of really passionate people about wolf restoration and other issues at the nexus of local communities and this immense wildlife issue. For our BEMP students especially, Some of the things that were really important to me in my journey in supporting wolves and helping to plan for wolf restoration was the ability to communicate amongst other professionals, technical experts, community members, and interpret what they were saying and what they meant and translating that into scientific planning and conservation planning. Those things that we do every day as part of the BEMP program, reading maps, understanding trends of data over time, communicating with folks throughout the community about what's going on, are an extremely important part of scientific planning on a day-to-day basis. Some of the other things that I've had the opportunity to do since also include conservation advocacy, specifically through the National Parks Conservation Association's Next Generation Advisory Council. One thing that I just cannot brag enough about this group of people is how amazing it is to connect with a group of impassioned young leaders in the environmental space throughout the country. And the thing that I like most about getting together with this group of folks is the amount of stories that we're able to share about the local contexts that we each are embedded in throughout the country, but we're all speaking the same language. That is parks preservation, the connection that we have to the outdoors as scientists, as outdoor recreators, and just enjoyers of public lands and those natural resources. And finally, in my day job, I work as a program manager for the Next 100 Coalition. We are a BIPOC-led and centered organization that specifically seeks to amplify, support, and coordinate the leadership administration of our lands, waters, coasts, and oceans that is led by historically marginalized leadership. And like for our National Parks Conservation Association Next Generation Advisory Council, the common thread here is really an understanding of how we're able to communicate across contexts and drive toward a common message. That is environmental justice, that is conservation, that is the benefit of a community that comes at the intersection of these public lands. Just last week, I was in Washington, D.C. I had the opportunity to speak to members of Congress, and I had the opportunity to speak to our representative, if you live in the Middle Rio Grande area or in parts of Albuquerque, Melanie Stansbury. And I took an opportunity to ask her, I said, I'm really proud of the opportunity to be represented by you in a plenary session. What would you share with somebody about how much New Mexico has to teach the rest of the country about public lands preservation? And she said, it's such a great question, but it's hard to teach because it's just part of the way that we live. It is ingrained in our language, it is ingrained in our culture. And I think a big part of that I carry on in my work every day, getting the opportunity to talk with other environmental professionals of color from throughout the country, whether that's in the picture on the left, our Ocean Equity Summits first convening last November in New Orleans, Louisiana, having the opportunity to create and enact policy around all of these different aspects of how to improve the way that we're stewarding our coasts and making those communities more resilient and well-preserved. Or, as in the picture on the right, the opportunity to train a future generation of these stewards, specifically through Next 100 Colorado Coalition's mentorship program, and really providing leadership development opportunities for folks in spaces where folks of color have been historically marginalized. And at the end of the day, these stories, these relationships, it's all really grounded in the power of community-driven storytelling. I think BEMP embodies that through all of the different perspectives that we've talked about this morning. And I've felt immensely lucky to have that really taught to me from a very young age. Even before I was a part of BEMP, it came from family. The picture that I'm most proud of here on this screen is the picture of me in the far right as a young high schooler getting to meet Dr. Jane Goodall. But part of the reason that I'm really proud of that picture is that the two children next to me are my younger brother and my younger sister. And having the opportunity not only to connect the environmental work that I do on a day-to-day basis with the broader community, with you all, but also with my family, who are also here tonight, just means the world to me and continues to bring me back in a meaningful way to this work. And with that, I want to thank you so much for listening to me speak and letting me share my story as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jonathan. Up next, we have Rose, Teo, and Alex from the Environmental Justice Air Quality team.
Buenas noches, good evening everyone. It's my honor to introduce you all to EJ Air Network. We are a community-driven air quality monitoring and research program. Our mission and vision is EJ Air is a community-led air monitoring network analyzing air quality through participatory programming where we live, pray, play, work, and go to school throughout the environmental justice communities of the Mountain View neighborhood, the broader South Valley, and the Pueblo of Isleta. EJ Air will bring unprecedented multi-stakeholder, interagency, and cross-sector collaboration to provide critical air quality data through participatory education and research and professional training to build community capacity to protect the health and wealth of our common air. I'd like to introduce you to our very unique structure. Again, we are a community-led program. I like to refer to us as a grandchild of the Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge. We're born out of their environmental and economic justice strategic plan. We are led by an 8-member organization steering committee that includes Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge, the Friends of Valle de Oro, Los Jardines Institute, the Pueblo of Isleta, Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps, BEMP, of course, which is why we're here, Mountain View Neighborhood Association, and the Mountain View Community Action Group. There's 2 sister programs. We represent the Mountain View / South Valley program. We also have a sister program emerging in the Pueblo of Isleta. And here we are, the 3 core staff of EJ Air. My name is Rose Thunderchief. To my left is Teo and Alex. And we also have contracted with BEMP. Big shout out to Shelby and Louisa, who have been helping us develop an air quality curriculum. It's an educational curriculum to share with students of all ages. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleagues.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Preston. I'm the data quality analyst for the EJ Air Group. And I wanted to start off with a sort of journey through the South Valley of Albuquerque, if this will play. If the video is not able to play, then I can just kind of verbally go through it. Okay, I'll go verbally through it. So the South Valley of Albuquerque is a heavily industrialized area with a lot of mixed use and industrial zoning. But kind of tucked within that industrial zoning are communities that have been there for generations before they were redlined and industrial zoned. And of that industrial activity, we have a lot of different facilities. Among those are concrete plants, asphalt plants, metal recycling facilities, wastewater treatment facilities, power generation, you name it, it's in the South Valley, as well as 2 Superfund sites. And so with all of this industrial activity, there's sort of this overburden on the Mountain View community and the communities within the South Valley that are facing the effects of this air pollution. And a lot of those sources tend to be combustion sources, and so what we're looking at is particulate matter, both PM 2.5 and PM 10. as well as NOx and VOCs. I just kind of wanted to set the stage there, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about how we're gonna measure all this. It's a really complex problem. How do you measure all of these industrial sources? We have a few strategies. We have both mobile and stationary sensors. So mobile sensors allow us to see how pollution varies in space. So Teo and I have been going out on our bikes. We can mount these mobile sensors onto our bikes, and we do these sort of big bike routes around the South Valley and collect air quality data that way. And we also have been doing electric vehicle monitoring. We have some folks in the community that have electric vehicles, and we've been going through neighborhoods and doing some mobile monitoring that way as well. We have recently purchased stationary sensors. As you can see behind me, it's a clarity sensor, and we can mount those in strategic places throughout the neighborhoods to collect data that varies in time. So this is going to be 24-hour collection data of particulate matter, as well as a few other air pollutants. Another consideration is low cost versus regulatory monitors. Low cost monitors we can buy lots of. It's very easy on the budget, and we can implement these in sort of a broad network to get an idea of what air quality looks like broadly within a neighborhood or other community areas of interest. They're not quite as accurate though as regulatory monitors. Those are kind of the gold standard. They cost a little bit more, but they give us more accurate information that might be defensible. We have two other types of monitoring: source monitoring, so fence line monitoring, where we monitor outside of industrial areas, and we can use factors such as wind speed and wind direction to correlate the pollution concentrations that we collect with industrial sources. And then we also can do ambient monitoring. Ambient monitoring is just within a neighborhood or other community areas of interest, which give us kind of more of an idea of what folks are getting exposed to. And then finally, there's different ways as a community-led air monitoring program. There's different ways for community engagement. One, which Rose talked about, we have steering committee meetings. So we have elected individuals from different Mountain View associations that come to our meetings and provide guidance and steering to our team. And we also have developed a survey to get more information from individuals within the South Valley. So these are kind of just two current accomplishments I wanted to outline here. We've got six stationary monitors that we've purchased, and we have them co-located with reference grade monitors in the South Valley, so we can see how well they perform versus these gold standard sensors. And as of recently, we've done over 800 miles of bicycle monitoring throughout the South Valley. So we're really proud of all the data that we've collected so far. And I will pass it off to Teo.
Thanks, Alex. I'm Teo Keeley-LeClaire. I'm the technical specialist for the group. So I'm going to share with you just a little bit of our data. Up here, first of all, let's see, the color of the data is the pollutant concentration we're measuring. So a darker blue means higher pollution levels. And then the size is the total number of data points in that space. So it's how many times we've been back there. And so you can see we're collecting data on our bike routes. That's this loop here. And then also by electric vehicle, and that kind of goes through zigzag street by street. Shout out to Louisa for helping us out with that. And you can start to see that there's some areas that are darker blue in our all data here on the left. So we're starting to see hotspots. And then you can also see on the right, we've filtered our data for just observations when industrial sites were operating, and you can see that on average, the entirety of it is a darker blue. So we're already starting to see the effects of industrial operations on the pollutant concentration in this neighborhood. And then to kind of zoom back out and remind us of why we're doing this work, we are looking at different locations for siting our monitors and really want that to be of places that are of interest to the community. Locations where people are outside, and especially sensitive populations like children and the elderly. We want to be sure that we're measuring the air quality at those locations. So with that in mind, we're looking at a number of different schools. We're looking at community centers and community gardens and parks. We're definitely going to be installing at the Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge, as well as in neighborhoods and residential areas. And then the scientific side of this is, if you look on the left here, we want to spread out our monitoring locations, both within the industrial corridor, that's this red box. So we have a good understanding of what's happening in there, but we also want to look outside of this box to see what's coming from it and impacting other neighborhoods, or what might be coming from outside of it and impacting Mountain View from outside. So with that, thanks for coming to talk to us, and Rose is going to give a little wrap-up spiel.
All right, thank you for allowing us to introduce our community-led air monitoring network to you all. We're very excited to not only add air quality monitoring to the neighborhood and to the community, but also to develop a curriculum in conjunction with BEMP that we can share with students as well. If you have a moment, we would love for you to take one of our surveys. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. The surveys also, if you don't get a chance to get the QR code right now, the survey, there's QR codes back on the back table with the survey on it. I also want to give a shout out to one of our former educators, Annie, who also put in a lot of work for the curriculum development. Great. Up next, we have Kelsey Bicknell, who is the environmental manager with the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing the Water Authority to come speak with you all about a project that we're very excited about. This is called the SWRP Outfall Restoration Project. SWRP is the name that we have given our wastewater treatment plant. It's a much more fun way to talk about wastewater. For those of you who have never been to our wastewater treatment plant, it is located in the South Valley of Albuquerque. It's south of Rio Bravo Boulevard and north of the Valle de Oro. Our plant is located on the eastern bank of the Rio Grande, shown in that zoomed in area right there. We have a outfall that carries our treated wastewater directly to the Rio Grande, and our project area is shown in those black squiggly lines. It's where we scoped out originally the restoration project. So the goal with this restoration project is three things. One is to accomplish and improve water quality. The second is to increase public access in the area, and the third is to create enhanced habitat, particularly for endangered species. We cannot do this alone. The Water Authority does not own the land in this area. It's actually owned jointly by MRGCD and the Bureau of Reclamation. In addition, the levees in the area are operated, or they're required to be maintained by the Army Corps. There's agricultural ditches in the area. And there's quite a few active and informal trails that connect the South Valley to the rest of the city to the north. This has surprisingly been a fairly fast-moving project as far as restoration projects go. We had authorization to begin this work in July of 2022, and as of right now, we are ready to go to construction. We are currently bidding the construction contracting work to go to construction for this project. This has followed a very standard design process. In engineering, there's usually stop points at 30%, 60%, and 90% to make sure that the project is moving along as it should. And at each of these stop points, we took the time to engage with the stakeholders for the project to make sure that what we were proposing and designing was aligning with the goals of the project. Just some information about why we're out here doing this project. If you've ever been out to the outfall, it is very clear water compared to the very turbid and brown water of the Rio Grande. And what that has created is an area of that has trouble mixing. So the water that comes out of our wastewater treatment plant does not have a lot of sediment in it. It doesn't have any sediment in it. And it hugs the eastern bank of the river on this side. And as a result of that, it's created an erosion environment that has created a cut bank that is about as tall as I am. And because of that, during high flow periods in the Rio Grande, the river does not have an opportunity to connect with its floodplain. And so the goal of this project is to try to reconnect the river with its floodplain and also improve that mixing environment so that we don't have that erosional issue. One of the big reasons why we're doing this project is to benefit a species called the Rio Grande silvery minnow. This is the poster child of endangered species for the middle Rio Grande and is a prime example of how human activity can impact a species. Previously, this fish was abundant throughout the Rio Grande and the Pecos River all the way down through to Texas and the Gulf of Mexico. But due to human activities in the Rio Grande, it is now limited to the reach between Cochiti Reservoir and Elephant Butte Dam. And there's been many efforts over the years to improve habitat for this species and help it flourish in any way that we can. And because of that, there's a wide body of literature that we were able to rely on in order to design this restoration project. So to accomplish our first goal, we wanted to improve water quality downstream of our wastewater outfall. And to do this, our goal was to reduce erosion because through soil testing of the bank sediment, we learned that the erosion process is releasing suspended solids, of course, but also nitrogen and phosphorus into the river and allows us to travel downstream. So the first goal of the project is to create or introduce restoration strategies that will reduce the erosion potential on that bank. These are going to look like core mats, root water revetments, and stone keys, and those in turn will be combined to reduce the amount of erosion occurring at the site and in turn reduce the amount of nutrients that get loaded into the river each year. The second part of the project is to facilitate public access. Again, this is a very active area and there aren't great trails through the Bosque to enjoy the cottonwood forest that's down there. And so we plan to construct new pedestrian trails. We'll be adding in markers to help people find their way around. There's abundant fishing at the outfall itself, and so we will be preserving that fishing access and ensuring that people can access it safely. And then one thing that I am really excited about that we're doing is we're going to spend all this work to create an environment that benefits species in the area. So in recognition of that, we will also be removing trails that could introduce disturbances to ecologically sensitive areas. So we don't want people stomping around through areas that we've worked really hard to create a nice environment for these species to flourish. In addition to that, we will also be introducing educational signage, which will talk about the Bosque itself, the cottonwood forest, the different species that use the Bosque, why we're doing this restoration project and what it's benefiting. And then finally, we intend to connect the restoration site to educational opportunities. If you're familiar with the Water Authority, we have a very large education program, and we will also be partnering with other agencies to bring people out, kids and adults out to experience this area. The last goal of our project is to create habitat for the Rio Grande silvery minnow. This is a fish that requires peak runoff to spawn, which occurs during between May and July each year. And through our review of the literature, we've determined that about 25 days is an ideal inundation period to allow these fish to spawn. In addition to that, the design criteria that we're going for with the floodplain enhancements is to allow shallow water to develop that's very slow moving, which the fish need to hang out and spawn. And then finally, as the water recedes back into the Rio Grande itself, we want to create habitat to allow the fish to winter when they require still water again with woody debris for cover. This is my favorite slide. So this is a summary of what our final site design is going to look like. The images on the right are a hyper-realistic rendering that our design engineer created to show what the site's going to look like once we're finished. We really hope that it comes out exactly how it looks in these pictures. But the first thing I want to talk about is how we're going to achieve this floodplain inundation. We will do so using a terraced floodplain design where we will achieve partial inundation at 900 CFS and then full inundation at 1500 CFS. And that, the range of flows in between will provide the adequate inundation period for the Rio Grande Silver Minnow to spawn in. In addition, for the sediment management considerations, we will be focusing entirely downstream of our outfall. And I want to highlight one particular thing that we're very excited about, which is the root water revetments. So root water revetments are really cool. They're basically any trees that you cut down, you can shove into the bank of the river with their roots out, facing the channel. And they create bank stabilization. It also helps improve water quality and creates that in-channel woody debris that the fish need to winter in. A couple of extra bonus things that we're doing with this project, because we'll be putting in that pedestrian trail network, we want to ensure that it's continuous, and there are jetty jacks that go through this area that would interrupt that continuity. And so we will be removing those jetty jacks, and then we'll also be removing invasive species in the area. And once those species are removed and we have an opportunity to revegetate, we have created a revegetation plan that's based on hydrologic zones. Excuse me. I made it mad. Okay, sorry about that. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how we were going to revegetate this site. And what we settled on was 4 revegetation zones that are split out based on the frequency of inundation and the depth to groundwater. So the first zone, zone 1, is the zone that's closest to the river. And then as you move further back, that's the zones that will cover the tree canopy type species. And the benefit and importance of doing this type of zoning is it creates a more varied vegetation environment for other species to use and benefit from, such as the southwestern willow flycatcher and the monarch butterfly. The Water Authority cannot do this project in a vacuum. We've been working very closely with a lot of partner agencies to accomplish this work, and we are, again, very excited and grateful for the feedback and expertise that we've received during this project design. So those are some of our stakeholders up on this slide. I'm not going to read them all because there's very many. With that, I will conclude, and if you have any further questions or want to learn more about the site and the project, please come find me. I have my business cards, and I'm happy to share more information. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're about to meet our keynote speaker, but before that, I just want to encourage everybody again to take a look at our posters in the back. There's some on the table, there's some hanging up that our students put a lot of work into. All right, next up, we have our keynote speaker, Melanie Kirby, who is the Extension Educator of Land Grant Programs at the Institute of American Indian Arts, based at the University of Indigenous Creative Excellence. She is an entomologist, a bee breeder, a writer, and a member of the Tortugas Pueblo. So, Melanie.
Thank you. I have my little Canva cheat sheet here so that I know which slides, so hopefully I won't get myself dizzy turning backwards here. Did I hit it already? Okay. Well, thank you all. And I'll ask a few questions of the audience. How many people have heard of Tortugas Pueblo? Lots of things we don't know about New Mexico we're still learning. How many people know that there's 2 Isleta Pueblos? Okay, a couple of people know that. Well, one of the things that really unites us all is this main vein artery of the Rio Grande, right? And so I grew up in the southern part of the state. Tortugas Pueblo is actually cousins to Taos and Isleta Pueblos. And so way back when, as people would come down to get away from the cold for the winter, some of the elderly and the infirm ended up staying in Tortugas Pueblo. And so how many of you have heard of the rivals NMSU? So NMSU is on the ancestral lands of Tortugas Pueblo. And so right across I-10, where Mesilla, New Mexico is, that is actually where Tortugas Pueblo is. And we still have a small community there. We have some of our tribal buildings. We are a state-recognized tribal entity, which is interesting because most of the other tribal communities in New Mexico are federally recognized. But as a state-recognized tribal entity, we can actually boast that we are the oldest incorporated village in New Mexico, although many people haven't even heard of it. So I myself have a mixed heritage. On my mother's side, I'm from Tortugas Pueblo. We are Indo-Hispano, Mesclero Apache, and then also Tiwa. And then also on my father's side, I'm Caribbean. My last name is Scottish-Irish. And so I've got pretty much a little drop of blood from all over. And I'm American at this point, as all of us here in this room are as well. But I'll share a little bit. I wanted to kind of get that out of the way because I was thinking people are probably like, where's Tortugas Pueblo? And where is that? But it's near the river. So my presentation, and actually I should look at my little cheat sheet so I'm not, it's just basically my phone app so that I don't have to turn around too much. I'm going to bounce a little bit between different sort of phases of participation, and I think it was really awesome to hear the beginning talking about how interconnected and sort of these connections that we have across the landscape. But then also to hear the cool research that the students are doing. These are our next generation of leaders and environmental educators, which is super inspiring and hopeful. And then to also hear storytelling. I mean, I got actually quite emotional hearing of the young man's journey where he started off as a student and now he's on to amazing things, and really that sort of experience that he's had of being involved with monitoring in the bosque has really just led him to these amazing professional opportunities. And I think that that's something that our Rio Grande, whether we know it or not, this life vein really feeds us in a lot of different ways, not only creatively, but spiritually, and of course, through our bellies and what we want to eat and grow right here in our enchanted lands. So I'll talk a little bit about sort of my individual and then community, but then also, oh, sorry. In the dark. I might have to go back a second. I forgot I had a video. And then also talk a little bit about how that translates into institutional. So I myself am actually a professional beekeeper. I've been doing that for 28 years now. I started off as a Peace Corps volunteer way back when in the late 90s, right before the internet took off. And that really took me on this path around the world, which this video will kind of describe. And then brought me back home here to Center, to New Mexico, to bring back what I had learned, to come and share it with my communities and to support biodiversity conservation here. But with that, I'll play this little video that kind of describes some of my work.
Traveled many a bumpy road in the darkest of nights, serving as a chauffeur to beings of sweet starlight. I migrate with them, like a shepherd, roaming with my flock of winged midwives, as a fellow follower of the bloom, the self-proclaimed nectar nomad. I was introduced to this artistic science of beekeeping 2 decades ago, as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer collaborating with peasant farmers in South America. The bees captivated my curious mind, and working in an outdoor office made of fresh air, flowers, and freedom enticed my soul. My nomadic journey as an apiculturist has taken me far from where I could ever have imagined, having come from a humble home in Pueblo Indian country in New Mexico. My heritage is a mosaic of cellular memories influenced by my Native American ancestors, who instilled in me a profound reverence for place and purpose, and to pursue acts of community service. So I chose to become a bee farmer, as I wanted to continue to learn from Mother Nature and Father Time. As a farmer, I share beekeepers' voices of concern and need for adaptation and innovation to fulfill our dedication for local to global food production. Sharing their challenges, I became encouraged to return to academia to help quantify their observations and advocate for pollinator conservation. Now as a researcher, my quest to better understand the relationship between cultures, food systems, and stewardship is at the forefront of my thoughts. Honeybees are like some of us and our ancestors, immigrants to this country. They have adapted and become the backbone of agriculture. There are distinct ecotypes or subspecies of honeybees like races in humans. And these ecotypes carry genetic histories like seeds which contain their very existence and memories of creation. For within each one, they have the power to nurture and adapt, and the magnificence to create life, food, and medicine for the world. One of the things I most enjoy about beekeeping is that it bridges cultures and goes beyond borders. It connects us to our origins as fellow beings of light, as a part of this land, not separate from it. This magnificence is alluring and inspires me to find and connect with bees and their keepers around the globe. I invite you all to accompany me on my nectar nomad storytelling journey as I chase the bloom, encounter cultures, and follow the liquid starlight known as honey from flora to flavor to feast.
I made that during lockdown, so something to do. But I like to play it through to the end because my mom did the soundtrack for me. She's a wind writer, so she plays the flute. But yeah, this is Tortugas Pueblo. And even though it says that we were established in 1852, we've been around a lot longer. But that's when we became incorporated. Our feast days coincide with Our Lady of Guadalupe celebration, which is December 12th, and then also for the Dia de San Juan, which is June 24th. And I would invite you all to come down. I would recommend the 12th because there's a huge community meal. It's free, and it's an intertribal celebration. So we have like over 5 groups that dance that day, and it's right next to NMSU. So. But what does it mean to be Indigenous? And as someone who's of mixed heritage and who has grown up here in New Mexico, this is something that, again, was mentioned earlier. Our sort of connections to this place is, from Melanie Stansbury, is because we've lived it, right? It's a part of who we are. And so I think for many of us who are from here, we can take this for granted, or sometimes we don't necessarily see what that distinction is until we go elsewhere. But then there are other people that move here and they pick up on it. And some of them are quite fascinated with it and want to learn more about it or want to live here. And I think that this is something that, in general, this is what I like to share with folks, is that regardless of where you come from or who you are or what your last name is, every single person in this room can trace their heritage back to some Indigenous community somewhere in the world. So we are all brothers and sisters. And we all have the capacity to tap into or to reflect and to remember some of these, what we call ancestral knowledge, or these ways of being. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, and of course I lost my screen, so I'm going to have to look back again. Just what are those connections? And there's a variety of creation stories, but for many Indigenous peoples, and of course there's over 500 federally recognized tribes, there's just as many unfederally across this country. But there is, in general, an interconnected worldview that many Indigenous cultures feel and live through. And so the creation story is mainly knowing that we are a part of this place. And basically our ways of being very much coincide with our ways of knowing. It's about place. And so in other times I've kind of framed this presentation as, the importance of place, power, and purpose in pollinator conservation, where power actually is more defined by meaning responsibility. And so it really is about feeling that sense of responsibility for being interconnected within a particular space. And the bees, for me, have done that. And I'll talk a little bit about honeybees and other bees, because there's a variety of bees, and not all are from here. Some have been introduced, just like many of our peoples have, right? But they have assimilated, they have adapted, and there are ways in which it all actually works together, if we can steward fairly. And stewardship is really that. It's about sharing our stories and being able to cast those seeds from which these more stories can grow. So I'll just reference briefly, and I know this is probably preaching to the choir a little bit, especially if you're here from New Mexico. But there's a really cool paper that came out a few years ago by a woman named Dr. Michelle Montgomery. She's at the University of Washington in Tacoma, and also Dr. Paulette Blanchard, who's based out of Haskell University in Kansas. And they were actually trying to figure out why is it that Indigenous graduate students have a hard time finishing. And there's already been some talk, there's a lot in the literature about what they call the 4 R's of Indigenous research or Indigenous knowledge. And they took it a step further and added some more to it. And I won't go through each one super specifically, but you've got, a variety of R's up there. And if I had to add my own, it would be reverence is the next one that I would add to that. But this is a framework that, again, it's not pan-Indigenous. As my supervisor, I likes to tell me, slap a feather on it and people will call it Indigenous. We're not trying to do that. It's more just showing that these are some of the more common principles that run parallel across the world and with Indigenous peoples everywhere. And so these peoples and their ways of being and their ways of knowing have very much been interconnected with their ancestors. And so I became quite fascinated throughout my own beekeeping journey with learning about the ancestors of bees. And so what some folks may not realize is that there's over 20,000 different kinds of bee species globally that we know about. Of those 20,000, 1,400 or so of those are found right here in New Mexico. And so we are actually a real hotbed of pollinator biodiversity, of bee biodiversity. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we live where the desert and the plains meet the Rocky Mountains. We have so much biodiverse landscapes that it's really amazing that you can go from tundra to desert, all in, a 30-minute drive practically. And so with bees, I started to really wonder, well, where are they coming from and how have they adapted to these different landscapes? And what does that mean for our bees here in New Mexico? And so what some people may not realize is that honeybees are one of those 20,000, right? But within that, there's over 30 recognized subspecies. So not all honeybees are the same, but they all originated, so to speak, from an original bee or an ancestor bee. And actually used to be a wasp, but that's a story for another time. And at any rate, the bees, though, have adapted. They have moved to different places. They've followed the bloom. They have learned different landscapes. They have figured out where to make their homes, whether it's in a cave or in a tree hollow or wherever it happens to be. Maybe it's in the eaves of your house. Who knows? But they are very adaptive, just like humans. And so what many people don't realize is that those ancestor bees have stories that have persisted as well and that have been passed on. And so what folks may not realize, and this is one of the reasons why I asked the question of how many people know this about New Mexico, did anybody here know that the US or North America actually used to have their own native honeybee species? It's called Apis nearctica. And they actually found fossil evidence that's dated 14 million years old. They found it in Nevada of this ancestor bee. And so while our contemporary American bees at this point, which they're very much just like us, a product of the melting pot, they all have a connection to this ancestor bee. And so they used to be here. This ancestor bee was here, and it coexisted with a lot of other bee species, which many of them are solitary or not very active during all parts of the year. They're not generalist pollinators like honeybees are, but they are all related. And so humans became very fascinated with this. I became very fascinated with this. And so we have cultures across the globe that have these long-standing traditions of working with bees. Some are in Egypt, some are in Africa. It spans pretty much everywhere except Antarctica. So, and that's actually what's influenced a lot of my work with trying to help folks also reconnect with that ancestral side of apiculture or beekeeping. And what does it mean to keep bees in a way or through methods that tap back into those 7 or 8 R's versus just production, honey, money, which isn't always the case with shifting climate, I'll tell you that much. But the ability to cast seeds and share stories, I think, is one of the main beauties of being human, We can do this monitoring. We can collect this data. We can help to amplify the voices of the silvery minnow who cannot actually speak in the same language as us, right? And same for some of these other macroinvertebrate or insect or arthropod species that people are looking at, and even the trees and the cottonwoods that are being monitored. We have the ability to help translate some of that information and to then share their voices. And so I would like to share that, this is obviously not anything new, but the fact that we are all kin, and the fact that all of our plant and animal relatives are also our kin is pretty significant if we don't forget it. So I kind of did a little picture here of some of the different ways, or at least the 7 R's, but putting them more in a framework that shows that we are a part, and this is a part of our responsibility. And I know I'm going to run out of time here soon, so I'm going to try because this is just the beginning. I have a lot of slides for you. But I really wanted to focus on the notion of consilience, which is a really cool word, which means unity of knowledge. So it means interdisciplinary, and that's what we get to do when we're looking at ecological systems. We get to look at how the air quality is affecting this, how the water flow or lack thereof is affecting, and how it all interconnects. So this is just a little image here showing the ancestor bee, Apis nearctica, coming from Nevada. But how that is translated into pollinator kin and being related to us, I've gotten to do some of this work through my role as the extension educator at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, which is actually a contemporary art school. It's been around for over 60 years, but we get to do STEAM, which is really exciting because I love science, but I also really love art. And I really loved seeing all the posters in the back and how everybody depicted the work that they do. I think that was just phenomenal. So for those who aren't familiar, this is a little bit of information about the Institute of American Indian Arts. Most tribal colleges are affiliated with one single tribal entity or community, but IAIA is actually open to everybody. And so we have over 91 tribes from across the country represented in our student body, which makes it a really good experience for students to also learn about other tribal communities in other parts of the country. We have an Indigenous Youth Ag program, so we work on helping to connect youth back with food systems and learning more about how to grow food and the importance of soil health, water, clean air, all of that. And then we also do a lot of different workshops. We have a small seed library, which we're going to be growing out, and then also starting to incorporate more habitat restoration programs as well. I think that's a different slide. We have that QR code goes to over 40 different recordings of Indigenous scholars. Some are farmers, some are artists, some are chefs, some are environmental justice, what we call artivisms, who really use their work to help amplify Indigenous perspectives. And it's really about weaving in and contextualizing culture with the work that we do at the college. And actually it's a university now, so I should rephrase that. Some of our habitat restoration, and I think I have a slide in here because I want to get to it. We've been working with the Partners for Fish and Wildlife for the past 3 years, and so we actually have a huge event coming up on April 19th and 20th, free, open to the public. I invite you all to come. We're going to have in-estate Indigenous reggae band playing, free food, free music, all sorts of fun hands-on activities. We'll probably get to see a few bees. But we started our beekeeping program about 3 years ago, and we are very mindful of our beekeeping. We're not trying to do production, at least on the larger scale. We really use our bees to serve as sentinels to better inform us of what is happening in the landscape and to also help support germination rates so that we have a variety of pollinator species. We've gotten a few grants. These are kicking in actually this year. We've got some from USDA ARS Climate Science Hub, but also from Office of Tribal Relations to develop a grasslands and pollinator guide for our area pueblos and also a bee atlas for our area pueblos. And then additionally for, this is what I'm really excited about, a NIFA grant, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, so that we can look at the nutritional values of culturally relevant foods, but also of pollens and honeys in our area. I'm not going to play this video, but this actually, if you're curious, this has our students talking about our program. And then I'm going to swing through this really quickly because I know I'm running out of time. But I mentioned I'm a professional beekeeper, so I've been doing that for 28 years. And so I'm really pleased to say that this is the 20-year anniversary of our farm. My farm is on the high road to Taos. So if you ever head up to go to Picardies or Penasco or Sipapu, you'll pass by it. You'll see a bunch of bee boxes there. But we focus actually on queen bee breeding. So I use the landscape to actually help select quality strains of bees that do well in our area naturally, and then help to nurture that natural process of reproduction to then share with area beekeepers. And so these are just a few pictures of our farm and some farm shots. And the community projects that we did, I mentioned I would be bouncing back and forth through different community events. So working across states, Colorado, California. This is very busy, but I was able to start a coast-to-coast bee breeding network that includes 12 producers and 12 researchers. And so this is going on year 2. And I'm excited to share it because the home base for this is here in New Mexico. We have so many awesome things that we can provide. We may not scream in production or in water or in how many people live here, but this is really beautiful, amazing landscape with which to better learn about our environment. And so we can really serve as leaders to the greater country on how to be climate adaptive and how to be climate smart. So these are just pictures from this network. We use drones to actually find drones. People may not realize that male bees are called drones, so we use UAVs or unmanned aerial vehicles to find where the male bees are congregating, and hoping to do some more research with that on the Rio Chama from feral bees that are now living in the canyons. But yeah, I will end it there because I know I'm totally out of time. But if you would like to have more information, you can follow us at IAIA Land Grant Programs or at Zia Queen Bees. And I thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited and thrilled that I got to be at the first in-person gathering for the Crawford Symposium this year. So thank you.
Amazing. All right. That was our keynote speaker. Thank you so much. I'm like, now I need to go up to your bee farm and see all the bees. I'm really excited. But before we wrap up, we have a quick message from Lynette Geeson, who is the Middle Rio Grande Program Coordinator for with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation.
Do you have slides?
I don't have
Okay. Slides, so if you could put
Well, I'll put up a
picture,
pretty picture.
That would be awesome.
I like that one.
Okay, that's great. Good evening. As she said, I'm Lynette Geeson, and I'm with the Bureau of Reclamation. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. I don't think the people that actually go out into the field and do the data collection understand how much it's appreciated. I have been with federal governments for more than 20 years, and we have used BEMP data as baseline data and beyond project data. So anytime that we do a project, we have to establish what is the baseline conditions out there. And BEMP data has been integral to that. Today I was at the National Ecosystem Restoration Conference. It's a national conference, and there were several sessions on ecosystem restoration, ecosystem health. And when asked if you had no monetary limits, what would be the number one thing you would do to assess your ecosystems to improve the health? And person after person said monitoring. So I just want you all to know that what you do out there is awesome and it's important, and I thank you very much.
In the spirit of thankfulness, this year I actually had the distinct honor of awarding a recipient of BEMP's 2024 Crawford Award. This award was established to recognize people who support science, education, and stewardship. Susan Schiphol is the resource teacher for Albuquerque Public Schools and the former garden elective teacher at Wildcat Bloom's Garden at Wilson Middle School. She's also currently part of the APS Outdoor Learning Team to work with teachers in creating spaces and places for students and teachers to learn outdoors. Akin to how she has witnessed that a garden can provide opportunities for students to learn, make discoveries, self-regulate, and find their strengths, we at BEMP have similarly witnessed how she nurtures and tends to students' spirits through hands-on science and deepening their connection to local landscapes. Thank you, Susan, for your time, dedication, and commitment in enriching this ecosystem, our scientific efforts, and for improving students' lives. You make New Mexico a healthier, happier place. Without further ado, Susan Schipple, it is my distinct honor and privilege to hand you our 2024 Crawford Award.
Just want to say thank you guys so much for coming, joining us in person. I really want to thank our poster and podium presenters for making this a successful return to in-person. Thank you so much for our planning committee and our BEMP staff, and also to biology for paying for this year's symposium. And finally, thank you to our funders, our partners, our teachers and students, the community. We're so grateful for your continued support. And I think Cliff would be really pleased to see that we are continuing his legacy. And thank you, Eric Fernandez and Donnie Eichhorst, for donating stuff for our silent auction. Thank you all for joining us.
There's plenty of food, so if anyone wants to take it home, please do.